country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not reminded from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. Thomas Jefferson, December 20th, 1787. This was a quote by Thomas Jefferson from The Right for the Citizens to Bear Arms. So today I'm going to talk about my opinion on why every man and woman should own a firearm. We're going to start off by looking at the Second Amendment in a modern day examination, the problem with gun-free areas, a small visualization, and the first step to own a firearm. I chose this topic because I am a first responder, I own a firearm, and I carry one for my work duty. I'm a protector and I'm a good person. So before we move on, who in the crowd owns a weapon? Okay, who in the crowd has fired a weapon? Okay, got a few. So let's move on, and I'm going to cover the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of the state. It is the right of the people to bear arms, and it shall not be infringed. So if you look at the Second Amendment in a modern day scope, you got to think about what the Founding Fathers were doing at that time. At that time, they had just finished fighting off the British. The British was imposing their power on the American colonies. The American colonies could not defend themselves because the British would not allow them to have firearms and have a military. So they were taking advantage of this. So as a founding father, they said, we cannot be that government that will impose their will on the people. So they thought about, well, the militia. We think as militia in a modern day sense as military or as some kind of like private military, but it is not militia that they said back in 1787. A militia was defined in that time as all the people except a few government positions. So basically it was the citizens. It was the citizens. And if you look at the security of the state, you could kind of define that in a modern day sense as foreign and domestic because they're threats to the state. So if you do like a modern definition of the Second Amendment, you could say that it is the right of the citizens to have firearms to defend themselves from foreign and domestic threats. And the government cannot take that away. That's a modern definition. So moving on from the Second Amendment, there's different problems with gun-free areas and gun-free zones. So most mass shootings happen in gun-free areas such as schools, theaters, religious areas, the most recent being the New Zealand shooting earlier this year, the STEM shooting that happened just last week in Denver, the Aurora Theater shooting that happened in 2012, and of course the Columbine shooting that started it all in 1999. So people say, well, look at all the shootings that happened, there should be more gun laws. Well, according to gun control, pros and cons, there are already 20,000 gun laws in effect today. So more gun laws is not really going to change anything. They're only creating more gun-free areas for more criminals to go have shootings in. Well, people say, well, should police respond faster? Okay. According to the sheriff county, the average shooting lasts 12 and a half minutes, and their average response time is 18 minutes to that shooting. So there's still a 6-minute window where the shooter has already completed everything he needs to do, and he could get away, or he could cause more harm before the sheriffs or police officers even arrive on scene. So let me leave you with a few more statistics. There's less crime with gun homicides with areas that have less gun laws, according to 10 Gun Arguments. Their biggest example was being regions of Texas. Statistics also show that there's more homicide with guns in areas with more gun laws, according to the gun debate. Their biggest example was Detroit. So, now that we kind of talked about the problem, let's picture something. There's John the robber. He breaks into your house and he's rummaging through your stuff. He's a drug addict. He needs his fix. He's trying to find the most valuable thing in your house, and he has a illegal weapon that he stole. You hear that from upstairs. So you hear him downstairs and you come downstairs. So you could call the sheriff's office, and from that moment to the time they respond is 18 minutes. Or you could have your own firearm and you could save your family in a half a second. Because who knows where this guy's mentality is at. Another story is even recently, there were people in my area, and where I live, in my neighborhood, that they had weapons and they were going up and checking people's doors. If people's doors were unlocked, they were going in the house with a weapon. So criminals are opportunists, and this is why they use gun-free areas and gun-free zones, because they know that they can do it and they can do what they need to. So moving on, now that we covered the problem and the visualization, well, you say, well, what's the solution? I think more people should be educated on their right with the Second Amendment and what that entails. It's for foreign and domestic threats that we already encounter every day. People should know more about a firearm and not be scared. There are many politicians and many news people that use like the AR-15. It's an assault rifle that it's out of control and we need to restrict the AR-15. Well, according to the FBI, a statistic that the FBI has, you're 3 times more likely to get stabbed by a knife than get fired on by a weapon. So should we have knife control then? Should the FBI be breaking into your house and take any knife over 3 inches because that's what's going to penetrate enough to kill you? It's up to you. So that being said, are there any questions from the crowd? Good. Well, let me leave you with this last little bit. If I have not convinced you that you should not take away my right to own a firearm, know that I can defend myself and I can defend others in situations that happen. I am the first person usually on scene at work. I am a first responder and I'm the first person in that stack. So for you to take away my right to make it home to my family is an infringement on my rights. Thank you.